All right, so the Browns have other problems than just the entire passing game and offense, right? They have a special teams problem. And how else but to follow up a video about, what the Browns need to get to the Super Bowl, or what did I learn from the teams that did get to the Super Bowl this year and the teams that didn't, with a video about kickers. Here it is, y'all. The kicker video. I know some of you guys are rejoicing. Y'all have been asking me to do it. Quincy, come on, man. Show some love to the kickers. This is going to be the video where we're going to talk about kickers in a non-condescending way. I'm going to try to be as straightforward about how I feel about how they can go about finding position, because this year has demonstrated to me that the Browns front office, or I don't know how much of it is the front office, right? I believe that part of a special teams coach's job probably is to do the special teams evaluation by the way that they react and talk about the players. That's the vibe I get. I don't know if that's a fact, but it would make a ton of sense if that's the case. But whatever the case is, Mike Prefer, I'm pretty sure he has a hand in finding whichever kickers they bring in. We brought in some awful kickers, man. Like, it's been bad for like the last, 4 years, honestly. I thought they were okay with, who did they have? What was it? It was Double Doink. We had Double Doink last year, but I thought he was fine. When 2020, we had Double Doink. Cody Parkey. I thought he was fine. Serviceable. He made the extra points. Like, I wasn't nervous about him. I knew he wasn't going to make like 55-yard field goals all the time, but I was under the assumption at the time that, the offense would be good enough that you won't have to be worried about them 55-yard field goals. But nonetheless, right? Other than Cody Parkey, who's been the most solid guy they found, and they got rid of him for Chase McLaughlin, who, he was cool for like a month or two and then really fell apart at the end of the season. It's been abysmal, this whole kicking situation with the Cleveland Browns. And I've been going at it with fans because I feel like fans get attached to kickers too fast. And I'm going to explain why I feel that way, and also how do I think the Browns could fill that hole at kicker. Because some people just think my opinion on kickers is that you shouldn't have one on the roster. Obviously, you need to have one. Obviously, he needs to at least be able to make, or he or she needs to be able to at least make extra points. But like, I'm not looking for a kicker who's going to be the savior. Like, if we get one, cool, but like, I'm not going out of my way to get like Justin Tucker just because, he's Justin Tucker. Like, if you can end up with a Justin Tucker, awesome. I'm not trading for a Justin Tucker is kind of where my stance is. That would be ridiculous in my opinion, because honestly, let's be real. If you need your point production, a significant amount of your point production to come from your kicking, your team sucks. Your team's going nowhere. That's just the truth, right? If we're relying on kickers to win like 4 or 5 games for the Cleveland Browns next year, we're in trouble. Okay, so this isn't going to fix the whole team or anything like that, trading for Justin Tucker or anything like that. But, it would be nice to make extra points. And that just didn't happen this year or last year or the year before. So let's just get into it and talk about the first way that the Browns can find a kicker. I hear this a lot. It's the draft. Some people want to draft the kicker. Now, I understand that Evan McPherson has been a revolution in Cincinnati. He's been great out there, and that's cool. That's cool. Like, that worked out for them, right? And then let's give Cincinnati the credit. They're pretty good at drafting kickers, right? They made the one mistake where they got Legatron. They drafted Legatron, and then, they just let him go for Fat Randy. So that was a mistake they made there, but they drafted the right guy. So they're pretty good at drafting that. I say that to say this. The Cleveland Browns have been terrible at finding kickers. It was flat out terrible. Post Phil Dawson, and they lucked into Phil Dawson in the expansion draft. But other than Phil, it's been awful. They drafted Zane Gonzalez, who legit cost you like 2 games. They drafted Austin Seibert, who legit cost you 2 games, and then they had to cut those guys. It was wasted draft picks both times. Wasted draft, 7th and the 5th. I can't believe they spun a 5th on Austin Seibert. I still can't believe that happened. But wasted draft picks, those guys are on other teams. And then when you look at the kickers that were drafted. Now, there are a good amount of kickers who are drafted. There are also a very large amount of kickers that are undrafted in the NFL. That kind of makes up the pool, obviously. But there are 3 kickers right now that are on the team that they were drafted by, right? There's Evan McPherson, or Zach McPherson. I forget which is his first name. And there is the guy in Buffalo. I'm sorry if I'm not remembering all these names. And then there's Mason Crosby. Now, Mason Crosby is the one guy that's the dream, right? You draft the kicker and you don't think about it for 20 years, right? That's what Mason Crosby has been. But understand, that's one dude out of 32 teams. One dude, one draft pick has worked out that well. I'm pretty sure Cincinnati's kicker, he's going to be added to that list because he's kicked them all the way to the Super Bowl. He ain't never going to get cut, quite frankly. They're going to keep on the team unless he gets awful, right? And we don't know what's up with the Bills kicker. But one dude that a team has drafted to be the kicker that has been there for a long time, right? And that's my issue with drafting kickers, right? Where everybody says it when it's so easy during the draft, right? Before you had to actually have these guys in camp. But everybody says it, oh man, you draft the kicker though, and you can solve that problem for the next 20 years. One, that's flawed logic because again, only one kicker in the NFL has been with this team for 10 plus years and has been drafted. So it's flawed logic there. 2, here's why it's flawed logic. Drafting a kicker is a bad idea, in my opinion. Not because kickers don't matter, right? I think people think when I say you shouldn't draft a kicker, we think, oh, you just don't want a kicker on it. Kickers do matter. We know kickers matter because you have to make extra points at the very least, right? Field goals are a plus, but extra points at the very least. In the field goal, to end halftime every once in a while, right? Like that's the bare minimum that you want out of a kicker. The reason I say it's a bad idea is not because I don't think they have value. It's because the NFL, period, sucks at evaluating them. There are reasons why this is, but just in general, the NFL is terrible at evaluating kickers. Why is this the case, right? The NFL has all these tests for all these different positions. Why is kicker so different? Well, think about it. How are you going to evaluate a kicker? For real. How do you evaluate it? The hashes are so dramatically different in college, high school, than they are in the NFL. The situations are dramatically different. There is no way any college special teams unit is going to be as fast as any NFL unit or comparable to any NFL special teams unit. Like that's a world of jump, right? There's a reason why not every good punt returner in college ends up being a good punt returner in the NFL. Special teams, huge jump in speed, right? So there's no way to really see how they'll kick on the hashes in the NFL. There's no way to really get them into your stadium in football weather and have them kick and handle the win before you draft them. It's just, you're kind of guessing, right? When it comes to evaluating a kicker. Like you could look at him make kicks at, a SEC school, but that might be in a dome or that might be with significantly less pressure than what they have in the NFL. And it might be with less speed and, things change. It's going to be a hard adjustment and a hard evaluation to make when you talk about scouting these kickers. Like, how do you scout a kicker? We have some knowledge on how you scout certain quarterbacks. We have some knowledge on how you scout position players and defensive players. But when it comes to kickers, there's no baseline of what you're going to look for because every kicker is good for a bunch of different reasons, right? And that's kind of one of the big issues, right? Our ability to scout special teams is light years behind our ability to scout other football players, right? So you take that into account. Another thing you need to test is, I think one of the most important things for a kicker is poise, right? They can have all the physical ability in the world, but if they cannot handle an extreme amount of pressure, they're not going to make it. And that's just a job, right? Like kickers aren't out there often in stress-free scenarios, right? Even an extra point. If you miss the extra point, man, like the whole stadium hates you for like at least 20 minutes. That's got to be pressure, right? Even in a blowout, like you kind of kill the vibe when you miss the extra point. You know what I mean? And then anytime the team's asking you to make a field goal, it's a high pressure situation because they need you to pull through because the offense couldn't. And then let's not even talk about how pressurized these game winning field goals are. You add in the fact that at least in college, you're not going to lose your scholarship in college. Like your circumstances are not going to change because you missed a couple of kicks. In the NFL, you can be living in a different city if you miss 2 kicks, right? That's a different level of pressure. That's a different level of poise required. That is, again, impossible to scout and impossible to test for as far as what we have right now. Now, when we talk about drafting kickers this year, I'm to be honest with you, nobody's saying there's a good kicker in this draft class. If you think there is one, okay, cool. I would love for you to name me a kicker in this draft class without Googling. If you could do that, I'd be impressed, but I can't. None of these kickers look like they're going to be worth a draft pick, right? Or have anything that you would think that is worth a draft pick. And again, like, how do you even know if a kicker's worth a draft pick? Because it's hard to evaluate these dudes. A lot of guys who come out of college can make 45 to 55-yard field goals. There's a ton of those guys, but not everybody has it mentally to be able to handle the pressure of being a NFL kicker, or, you know, the complexities of the different stadiums that you're going to be playing in, right? College stadiums are a little bit more cookie cutter. They're normally bowls, closed end or all the way open end. NFL stadiums have half open gaps on one end zone. The other end zone could be a completely different setup. Some are domes with some wind in them. Some are domes without wind. Some are sterile. Like, it's a much different world of kicking in the NFL than it is in college, which makes evaluating these dudes very difficult. And when the evaluation of a certain position is difficult, there are 2 ways this can go. Like with quarterback, right? Evaluation of quarterback is very difficult. So any consensus you get, you take that guy as early as possible. With kicking, it's the opposite. Most teams do what I like to call the lottery, which is the second way that the Browns could find a kicker, which is bring in a bunch of legs, and whichever one misses the least, that's your kicker. But if that dude starts missing during the season, he's gone, and we're going to bring in one of them other legs we brought in, right? Like, have a list of kickers that you can go to. Keep one on the practice squad. I'm all for keeping one on the practice squad, right? Just in case you need to yank somebody real quick. But, yeah, bring in a bunch of kickers. Have them kick. Whoever misses the least, that's the dude. Until that dude starts missing, then we bring in the dude who missed the second least. And then you keep doing that until you find somebody who doesn't miss. And that might sound ridiculous to a lot of people, because quite frankly, it is ridiculous. But it is how most teams get their kicker, right? Justin Tucker found this exact same way. Chris Boswell, Pittsburgh's kicker, found this exact way. A lot of teams get their kickers like this. Is how Young Hoku got found out. Like, it is just how this works, right? It is callous. It is crass. It is not very nice. And I understand why people would, you know, be sympathetic to kickers' feelings in this, because it's rough, man. Like, you miss 2 kicks and you gone. But that's how it's got to work, right? It's one of those things where either you could do it consistently or you can't. And if you can't, you got to go. There is no in between, you know. There is no time in the NFL to let's see if a kicker can age out of his inability to have any poise and pressurized moments, right? This ain't quarterback. We're not about to wait for you. Either you're going to be able to do it when you're on the team or you're not. And a lot of times this leads to a bunch of dudes just rotating throughout teams, and then, you know, they hit their stride and then they stick somewhere. Browns just need to get into that lottery. That's my personal method on how I would want to go about it. It's just do the lottery. Let's bring in all the legs we could bring in during training camp, have them kick a ton, and then whoever misses the least, that's who I'm going to go with. It is an unscientific manner of finding these kickers, but hey, man, you got to do something. The other way is a little bit more risky. It's free agency. Young Hoku, I think he's going to be a free agent. You could sign him. I would always get weary. Like there are a lot of times where signing a free agent kicker does work, right? Phil Dawson worked out for somebody. But I just get weary of signing a kicker who is not like ancient that a team's willing to let go, right? Like unless the cap situation is dire, most teams kind of hang on to their kicker forever. The Browns hung on to Phil Dawson for like 25 years or however long it felt like. I know it wasn't 25, but it was like at least 10, 15 years. And usually those dudes don't come available when they're like 28, 35 or something like that. Like they come available when they're like 36, 37. And any kicker that's like under that age and under that tier of kicker, I'm talking about like a Justin Tucker or a Chris Boswell level kicker, then it's real risky to sign them. And I think you're just better off doing the lottery. I think you can get the same kicking play out if you just do the lottery. But we'll see. That's my offering of a solution for kickers. I think it's best to go with the lottery. I understand why people have this romanticized ideal about drafting kickers. I just don't think the numbers support that reality. And when it comes to signing kickers, it's a risky game, man. It's a risky game to play, especially when you're going to be up against the cap in a couple of years. But that's my thoughts on how the Browns should fill their kicking problem. How do you think the Browns should fill their kicking problem? Because it's a problem. At this point, right? It's a problem. Last year, I thought we were okay with Cody Parkey, but they got rid of Cody Parkey, brought in Zach, and it was a mess. Well, Chase, and it was a mess. So let's see what the Browns could do with their kicking situation. Let me see what you guys think the Browns could do with their kicking situation. But again, guys, thank you for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.